All right, we've kind of leveled off on people joining, so we'll go ahead and get this thing kicked off. So, welcome to our Data Privacy Week webinar on privacy settings in your favorite apps. My name is Cliff Steinhauer. I'm the Director of Information Security and Engagement. This webinar is sponsored by Sensi by Copeland, and joining us from Sensi is Steve Stanzi, and we also have Jennifer Mahoney from Optiv. Thank you both for joining us today. So today we're going to talk about how to take control of your privacy by using app settings and kind of also understand a little bit about where all this data comes from and the devices that we're using and how those get involved as well. So this week's theme for Data Privacy Week is, of course, taking control of your data. So this theme is all about empowering people and organizations to make informed decisions regarding the data that we're sharing, who we're sharing it with, and how to take control of whether or not we choose to share that data or not. So one easy way to take control of that data is, of course, by adjusting the settings on our phones and our apps that we're already using. So Jennifer, I'm going to start with you. So what are some common settings across devices and apps that users can change right now if we want to help keep our data a little bit more secure?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is location tracking. So, on our phones, uh, you know, the kind of the overall setting in your phone, not app specific, but on your phone, location tracking. And that's the kind of the first thing that comes to my mind. Of course, I turn that off, and then inevitably I'm looking for directions to a place, and they're like, "Well, if we knew where you were, it would help us to tell you how to get there," right? And so, kind of continually managing if I need to turn that on for some reason to maybe go back in and turn it off when I'm done, or and I don't need that anymore. Um, and then for our applications on our phone, the websites that we visit to, cookies, the just the pop-ups, again, just kind of the basic things that websites and applications are asking us for. There are inevitably data sharing settings. What information are you okay? You need to submit a certain amount of data in order to use an application and have it function the way that you're uh, the reason that you've downloaded it, right? The reason that you're engaging with it. Um, but to evaluate when you are getting the prompts to approve sharing information, does that app need all the data it's asking for? A lot of times you can go in and be more specific where an application says it needs access to or it wants access to your microphone and your camera and your contacts and your clipboard and your whatever it is, um, to function. And in order to do the thing that you are signing up or engaging that app to do, you can go in and be more specific about choosing the specific settings application by application of what that actually needs, right? And to take a more individualized approach instead of the blanket approvals that they ask for.
Absolutely. Steve, anything to add?
No, I think I think Jennifer did a great job on that one. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I've definitely gone through and audited my own settings for my apps, and I realized, like, why does this app need my microphone? Why does this app need my camera? Or, maybe I'm wanting to view social media, but I don't want to post anything on social media. So I'll turn off certain settings like the camera and the microphone, and contacts and things like that, so that the app isn't taking those things from my phone when I'm not realizing
Contacts
it.
Contacts is the big thing for me that I think kind of sitting in a privacy role and evaluating why what
Right,
am I
right.
doing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sending data to contacts from whatever this thing is. Why? And that is a setting that I do pay close attention to now because my friends and family and work colleagues aren't signing up for the application that I'm using, right?
Right.
But to pay special attention to. And for us to kind of recognize that we have that additional level of control, it's not just kind of the initial approve all. You can go in and kind of individually address some of those things.
Hmm. Yeah, one that really surprised me was an encrypted messaging app that I wanted to try. And it's like, oh, let's get all your contacts so that we can find how to match them or how to find them to message them. And I thought that was an interesting kind of like, I'm using this app for privacy, but then it's also wanting all my contact information. So I thought that was kind of weird. Um, okay, awesome. Well, definitely like that's something we talk about at NCA a lot is going in and looking at your settings and making sure that you're actually comfortable with what the apps are requesting access to. Um, you mentioned like cookies and things like that. Like what else can we do other than app settings to kind of like lower our digital footprint in that way? And like is it a setting in the browser? Are there specific browsers we should be looking at using?
Well, definitely. And I'll jump in and Steve course correct or layer in, but there are browsers that are designed to put privacy first. Incognito mode is in Google Chrome is not as incognito as the name would imply, and it does have a warning when you open it up that says this is what we track and this is what we don't. This is what your employer can still see or your, whatever can still see and track. Um, it, uh, Browser DuckDuckGo is one that is, privacy forward. Um, and the browser settings also there's a I'm drawing a complete blank. Uh, the universal opt out that help me. What's the acronym? Uh,
Uh,
but
do not track or something? Or is it the
do not. It's like the GPC, the Global Privacy Consent opt out, and it will come to me at some point during this webinar. But
okay.
uh, in certain state privacy laws, there's expectation that organizations will recognize those global opt-outs, and most of them have been stayed. That there's a burden that business has put forth that it's going to be quite difficult to be able to recognize these things, and so enforcement of many of those have been stayed. But there are things that settings in your browser that you can do kind of that universal or attempt that universal opt out, and some will acknowledge and some won't, and you'll still get those pop-ups and requests for data.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything to add, Steve, before I go on to the next topic?
No, I think we're good. Yeah,
Okay, thanks. All right, so moving along to devices. So we hear the term Internet of Things or IoT. I kind of feel like this is almost an outdated term already because we all just have devices. We don't even like think about the fact that they're Internet of Thing devices. You just have to connect it to your Wi-Fi for the thing to work. Um, so Steve, can you give some background on what these are and then what kind of data do they collect and how can we make sure that our information is secure while we use them?
absolutely. So, at the highest level, Internet of Things really refers to the everyday objects that connect to the internet to either collect, share, or act on data. It could be anything from, your smart home devices like thermostats and TVs to wearable fitness trackers, your car, even some connected kids' toys, are kind of all part of that ecosystem. As far as the kind of devices or the kind of data that is, being collected on these devices, it really varies based on the actual device, but by and large, they're collecting data about your habits and your activities. It could include things like your location, where do you live, places you've gone to, occupancy, if you're currently home or not. It'd be things like health data, your heart rate, sleeping patterns, how often you exercise, and even activity data too. So just think about your TV, what apps are you using, what are you watching, how long are you watching it for? The list can kind of go on and on depending on the device that you're using and connected to the internet. But as far as ways to make sure your personal information is secure while you're using them, a lot of that really starts before you even purchase the product. You really got to read up, ask some questions, read about the privacy policies to understand what data is collected and how it's used. A big one I like to ask is, is it being shared with third parties? Because there's definitely devices out there that share your data, with advertisers or partners, outside of that organization. So asking that question is big. And we actually, at Sensi did a data privacy study that we released earlier this month. And it actually showed that data privacy policies are consistently the least researched item from before purchasing a product. So, it showed only 14% of people look into a manufacturer's data privacy policy before they purchase a product, and more than half, 52% of homeowners, that had a smart thermostat didn't even know how the data was being collected from that smart thermostat. So, it's definitely something to look into. There's definitely, I think Jennifer mentioned, several ways to kind of help protect yourself from, minimize your data being shared. I think maybe a few more things to kind of add to that is, obviously turning off those unnecessary features, but separating your smart devices from your main Wi-Fi network is a good tip as well too. When you're able to kind of put all your smart devices on a guest Wi-Fi network, if one of those did get hacked, it helps separate you from things like your laptop that might have more personal data on them. That's a good step to take, but really just the best bet to protect yourself is opt for privacy focused brands. We like to tout at Sensi that we're privacy first. We're clear about what we do and don't do with our customers' data. But there's a lot of companies out there as you start to kind of look into those categories that are offering the same thing now. So
Um,
Absolutely. So anything to add, Jen? Yeah, Jennifer?
yeah, first of all, shout out to the person who confirmed global privacy control is the thing that I was trying to think of. Thank you very much, GPC. Yes. Um, and the um, the settings, the not the settings, the privacy notices. Your point, Steve. Um, we all, I mean, sitting in the privacy field, I think we can all admit to clicking through and not taking the time to to read the notice ourselves, right? My my sister wanted a step tracker for my oldest nephew, who at the time was, I think, 11, when she kind of mentioned this was on his Christmas list, so he could participate in like a step count challenge at school. All right. Um, and I said, okay, I'll take care of this, right? And so did some research. I'm like, do you want it to do this, that, or the other thing? Okay, we'll limit it just to what you're asking for. And I pulled a couple of privacy notices and highlighted the sections that I wanted her to read. I was like, before I buy one of these devices, you need to agree to what it's going to do, right? And what it's going to capture, what it's going to track, and what you have access to, and how to exercise your rights over your child's data, right? And sent that to her. And of course, she rolled her eyes and she's like, whatever, okay, whatever, Jen. But it's like, I'm not going to buy this until you approve putting a tracker on your child, basically, right? So and you mentioned knowing whether you're home. Certain devices that know whether there's occupancy in the house. And of course, if you rent a house on, Airbnb, VRBO, they have to disclose if there's a video camera on the property, things like that. But also, our televisions that have assistive devices or convenience devices to allow you to, change the channel or the volume by hand motions. So it knows whether you're in the room and what, what your position in the room is in order to see those motions to affect the change that you're trying to execute on the device and things like that. And I think people a lot of times are really unaware of those types of capabilities that seemingly innocuous devices or devices that we have had in our homes for decades that now have, connectivity and Bluetooth, and this is assistive capability and AI built in, that as technology improves, while it's a familiar device by its function, has all these other things that have been added on over time that folks just simply aren't aware of.
Yeah, my brother-in-law just got a new TV and he said that you can just tell it to turn on and go to Netflix or whatever. And I was thinking like, okay, so that means there's a microphone on the TV that's always on listening for him to say that. But it's probably potentially also hearing other things. I mean, so this is addressing a couple of questions that we had in here. Like, isn't this kind of paranoid, the idea that apps are listening to us while we're not using it? And then somebody asked about is Alexa listening to us talk in our home, or is Siri or Alexa a risk to consumers from an ongoing information gathering, perspective? What are your comments on those tools or devices that are kind of like always on and listening for your command?
I can step in first. So in order to respond to the command they've been trained to listen to, they have to listen for that command, right? So are they always listening? Yes. If you read the policy notices and read news reporting where folks have done privacy investigations, et cetera, there are statements from the makers of these devices about how they listen, and they are capturing information and recording and how long they keep that information. And if I recall and I won't specify which because I'm not 100% sure, but one of them, I think it's like 6 seconds, and it records over itself every 6 seconds until it hears the prompt, and then it's doing the thing that you've asked it to do, right? Is it paranoid? Maybe, but it's true. Is it paranoid if it's true, right? Like, so they're listening in order to be able to execute what they've been trained to do, is kind of the short answer there.
Hmm.
And yeah, and how are they impacting? So I actually had a doctor uh, leave the room and deposit their Apple Watch outside the room because early on, several years ago, we're sitting in a room talking. I think I was with my mother actually at one of her appointments. And the Apple device answered a question that I asked. And I was like, no, no. Like, wait a minute, take it off. Right. And that's a consideration too. They're always listening. In what environments are those listening? Because it doesn't have to be your device that you have authorized to listen to your conversation. It's everybody around you
Hmm.
that could have these devices too.
And I'd jump in and say, I think listening is one thing, but there's a lot of data that, is being listened to as well too, that might be more scary or, a little more scary than, just the voice commands that it's listening to. When you start to kind of dive in and see the different points that it's tracking, I think that's sometimes a bigger concern. So
What are some of those points? So, like, can you be specific?
yeah, just like I mentioned earlier, kind of occupancy, knowing when you're home or not home in your house, tracking health data points and things like that. There's a lot that it is, being tracked in the background that you might not even be aware of. So
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I think of it as I don't have a an assistant in my home. I don't have watches or assistants. A lot of security and privacy professionals do. Um, it's interesting to me just to think about it, and let's think about it from kind of an uneducated perspective. If we would invite somebody to follow us around every single place that we go, they're following you into the bathroom, they're following you into the bedroom, they're following you, like, right? And would we agree to that? And then to think about the things that we agree to with the devices that we have, the telephone that we have in our, ubiquitous telephone that is attached to us as an extension of our brain or an extension of our hand. And it's always with us. And so to be aware of if you kind of think about it in that sense, where you always have somebody listening, you always have somebody kind of following you, there are privacy protections in place, there are security protections and guardrails in place. But be very aware, reading those privacy notices, limiting where you can or where you choose to the data that is collected, tracked, and shared. Um, and those notices will tell you information that you may be surprised, or the people in your family who, because all of us on this call are educated, right? We're reading those notices and we're very aware. But when your family says, I was just talking about this and I saw an ad on my phone, and how does that happen? You can tell them how it happens, right? With the tracking settings and ways to minimize that.
Absolutely. All right. That's fantastic. This is a great conversation. So, um, are there any examples of data that individuals might not be aware that they're sharing with their devices and apps? And why would our apps collect this data and what are some of those devices? This one's for Jennifer.
Well, I think Steve already kind of touched on this, right?
Yeah.
Um, And in talking about the settings, Cliff, you mentioned it. You know, why does my privacy forward encrypted app need my contacts list? I'll tell you what contact I'm trying to reach, right? I don't want to give you everything
Yeah.
just in case, right? Um, and so, you know, I think access to your contacts is one that I mentioned earlier kind of surprised me when I really started paying attention to these things. Um, Occupancy, Steve, that you mentioned, you know, there are devices in our homes, you know, connected appliances in our kitchen. Why do I need Bluetooth on my dishwasher? You know, things like this that you know, convenient, cool. I know when my dishes are done, or you know, I can get a notification on my phone that my dishwasher is done. Do I need that? And this is also, you know, kind of jump the gun a little bit here. Um, just because something is capable or can doesn't mean we should or need, right? And that's kind of an AI conversation as well as we layer AI over the data uses and the data processings that we have done historically. We step up from you know, machine learning to LLMs to generative AI and you know the things that are coming next as this technology just continues to evolve just on an exponential pace. um, the data that we are collecting, sharing about ourselves, about others, uh, layering that in, kind of the exposure becomes very quick and very large, very fast. And so to be very data aware, I think is super critical in this moment in time, just with the AI revolution that we are experiencing right now.
Absolutely. Steve, anything to add to that one?
I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Somebody asked about, and this kind of goes back to the listening and maybe seeing an ad for something you were talking about in your kitchen next to your Alexa device. But when you search on Google or in a search engine, and then you see ads about that thing, talk a little bit. I don't want, this is a long subject we could get into for a lot, but how does that work? Like, what is going on there?
Yes, I can jump in and kind of answer that. So, that's really kind of the data being passed back and forth. It's tracking it in different channels, different devices, collecting that data and then starting to kind of feed that overall picture of kind of who you are, what your interests are. And it starts to get into a little scary scope, sometimes, as you go down farther on that path and feel like, the things around you start to know you, really well. So.
Yeah. And I'll jump in there too. Search engines and social media are free services, right? So they have to do something to monetize that service to you. And advertising is the main driver of internet revenue for decades, right? So the search engine is the probably the most obvious way to collect data about people that they can then turn into, hey, this person was searching for X interest or X product. We have advertisers who want to sell that product, so we're going to send this hopefully anonymized usage data to the advertisers and they buy it up and put ads out that you're going to see within the results and within social media. So a couple people asked about what happens when your friend shares their contact information with an app and you're one of their contacts. So you're a third party to this whole thing. What does that impact that third party person?
They have granted access to your information as their own information, right? Um, there's a new feature on Instagram where when you're looking at the reels on Instagram, it now shows you who in your friends have also seen and interacted with that.
Hmm.
And so, anything that you are interacting with, your friends are seeing. And it's just disclosing more and more aspects of who you are as an individual, whether it's your contact information itself, whether it's your preferences when you're grocery shopping, or what appliance brand you're searching for, or then there could be disclosure of medical information. If there was a doctor or a medication, a medical device, right, that you're interacting with. So you may now disclose, hey, I had an interest in this thing that serves a medical need that other folks didn't know about you before, right? And so this interconnectedness of all of the things that we interact with, there is great value and great opportunity, right? And there are situations where things are critical in order to enable people who, might need accommodations and things like that, right? But then, there's this need to know where, while the intentions may be pure on the forefront and wanting to bring people together and build relationships, et cetera, there may be unintentional impact that either the organization, the social media platform, the individual kind of browsing that and interacting with the information didn't realize could happen downstream. And time will tell as we continue to kind of shrink our world and expand our global footprints, our data footprints into that world, what additional impacts that we haven't imagined yet could be, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump into. I'm a big fan of products that offer the connectivity when you want to, but don't require you to. I think someone mentioned earlier that, talking about how Sensi offers, connections to Amazon and Whoosh and some of that, and I think, the big difference there is it's optional, right? It's there for customers that want to, that understand the data implications and what that is, but we don't require that of our customers. I think that's a kind of a big differentiator for some of the products that exist out there.
A 1,000%, Steve, because your option to opt out is to not use that product, right?
Mhm.
Whereas your product will still function to do the thing that they bought it for, and you have the option to opt out. I really appreciate that. Thanks for making that a clear point for us.
Absolutely. Somebody asked, I think, an interesting question, and I'm thinking I'm going to use this one as our final one. But so, is it possible to have any balance between wanting to participate in innovation? So, being a part of the AI revolution, using these cool new devices, and having this, more convenient, connected world. Is there a way to balance wanting to use these devices with keeping our data and privacy protected? Or are we always going to be sacrificing giving up our data and our privacy for the ability and the privilege to use these oftentimes free services, right? Like, because a lot of apps or a lot of AI services right now are free. So are we always going to be having to give something up in exchange for these free products?
So there's a there's a Q&A in here that starts off, if data is the new gold. A
Yeah.
1,000%, right? And Cliff, you mentioned when the service is free, you are the target, right? Your
Yeah.
your data, your interactions, you are the target. Um, will there always be a trade? Your option is to not participate. And for many things, there are privacy forward options. Um, and however, I guess I should say, however, for many devices, applications, services that we sign up for, data is the currency, and your option is to opt out. And I think, for um, in many cases that won't necessarily be an option for us.
Yeah.
Um, but so um, ad revenue is money. Money is king, right? But and the data that drives ad revenue is the gold. And so there's still a lot of uh, things to think about and ways to improve privacy posture. I think in the meantime, for those of us that are interacting with applications, devices, etc., uh, do so with eyes wide open. Read the privacy notices before you buy the product. Do your research first, and just then be aware so that you can manage and minimize where you choose to.
think it's good for consumers to be vocal too. I think, we need to be more vocal about this and push these concerns. If you think, a couple of years ago, companies like DuckDuckGo didn't exist, right? That came as a result of the concern for, search engines and privacy. Web browsers like Brave, all of those things have kind of come as a result of, people, voicing their concerns and pushing back on some of this data collection. So I think, it's on all of us too to start to push that narrative and make sure that concern is known.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. This has been really interesting, and I think there's certainly an appetite for this type of discussion. So definitely look for us on LinkedIn. Keep bringing your questions. Like we'll have these posted up for other people to answer and continue this talk. For me, I think the biggest takeaway from this has been, hey, read those privacy policies, man. Those things that we all just skim through and accept so that we can go use that cool new thing we just signed up for or downloaded or bought. There's a lot in there that we need to pay attention to, and very few of us choose to read those. And then being judicious and doing that before actually committing to a product or an application is super important. So, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jennifer. It's been a really great conversation. Thank you to our very large audience, and I love the engagement and all the questions. And I mentioned at the top, I knew we wouldn't get to all the questions, so feel free to follow up with us. You can contact my email or Lucas and any of us here at StaySafeOnline.org, and definitely look for us on social media. So thank you so much. That's the end of our webinar, and have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of Data Privacy Week.
Happy Data
So,
Privacy Week. Thanks
Thank
all.
you. Bye.